Welcome to the 1001 Night. Now, when it was the 830th night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Hassan began relating to Sheikh Abd al-Quddus and Sheikh Abd al-Ruwashai, who sat chatting in the cave, all that had passed, first and last, till he came to the tale of the rod and cap. Whereupon quoth Abd al-Quddus, O my son, thou hast delivered thy wife and thy children, and hast no further need of the two. Now we were the means of thy winning to the islands of Wak, and I have done thee kindness for the sake of my nieces, the daughters of my brother. Wherefore I beg thee of thy bounty and favour to give me the rod, and Sheikh Abu al-Rushai the cap. When Hassan heard this, he hung down his head, being ashamed to reply, I will not give them to you, and said in his mind, Indeed, these two sheikhs have done me great kindness, and were the means of my winning to the islands of Wak, and but for them I would never have made the place, nor delivered my children, nor have I gotten me this rod and cap. So he raised his head and answered, Yes, I will give them to you, but, O my lords, I fear lest the supreme king, my wife's father, come upon me, and his commando combat me with them in my country, and I be unable to repel them for want of the rod and cap. Replied Abd al-Quddus, Fear not, O my son, we will continually succor thee, and keep watch and ward for thee in this place. And whosoever shall come against thee from thy wife's father, or any other, him will we fend off from thee. Wherefore be thou of good cheer, and keep thine eyes cool of tear, and hearten thy heart, and broaden thy breast, and feel not whatsoever of fear, for no harm shall come to thee. When Hassan heard this, he was abashed, and gave the cap to Abu al-Ruwashai, saying to Abd al-Quddus, Accompany me to my country, and I will give thee the rod. At this, the two elders rejoiced with exceeding joy, and made him ready riches and treasures which beggars all description. He abode with them 3 days, at the end of which he said again, and Sheikh Abd al-Quddus made ready to depart with him. So he and his wife mounted their beasts, and Abd al-Quddus whistled, when behold, a mighty big elephant trotted up with forehead and feet and amble from the heart of the desert, and he took it and mounted it. Then they farewelled Abu al-Ruwash, who disappeared within his cavern, and they fared on across country, traversing the land in its length and breadth, wherever Abd al-Quddus guided them by a short-cut and an easy way, till they drew near the land of the princesses, whereupon Hassan rejoiced at finding himself once more near his mother, and praised Allah for his safe return and reunion with his wife and children after so many hardships and perils, and thanked him for his favors and bounties, reciting these verses. Haply shall Allah deign us twain unite, and locked in strict embrace we'll hail the light. And wonders that befell me I'll recount, and all I suffered from the severance blight. And fain I'll cure my eyes by viewing you, for ever yearned my heart to see your sight. I hid a tale for you, my heart within, which when we meet o morn I'll fain recite. I'll blame you for the deeds by you were done, but while blame endeth, love shall stay in sight. Hardly had made an end of these verses when he looked and beheld there rose to view the great dome, and the jetting fount, and the emerald palace, and the mountain of clouds showed to them from afar, whereupon quoth Abd al-Quddus, Rejoice, O Hassan, in good tidings. Tonight shalt thou be guest of my nieces. At this he joyed with exceeding joy, as did his wife. And they alighted at the dome pavilion, where they took their rest, and ate and drank, after which they mounted horses again, and rode on till they came upon the palace. And they drew near the princesses, who were daughters of the king. Brother to Sheikh Abd al-Quddus came forth to meet them, and saluted them, and their uncle, who said to them, O daughters of my brother, behold, I have accomplished the need of this your brother Hassan, and have helped him to regain his wife and children. So they embraced him, and gave him joy of his return in safety and health, and of his reunion with his wife and children. And it was a day of festival with them. Then came forward Hassan's sister, the youngest princess, and embraced him, weeping with sore weeping, whilst he also wept for his long desolation. after which she complained to him of what she had suffered for the pangs of separation and weariness of spirit in his absence, and recited these two couplets. After they faring, never chanced I'd spy a shape, but did they form therein descry. Nor closed mine eyes in sleep, but thee I saw, e'en as though dwelling twixt the lid and the eye. When she had made an end of her verses, she rejoiced with joy exceeding, and Hassan said to her, O my sister, I thank none in this matter save thyself over all thy sisters, and may Allah Almighty vouchsafe thee aidance and countenance. Then he related to her all that had passed in his journey from first to last, and all that he had undergone, telling her what had betided him with his wife's sister, and how he had delivered his wife and wees. And he also described to her all that he had seen of marvels and grievous perils, even to how Queen Nur al-Huda would have slain him and his spouse and children, and none saved them from her but the Lord the Most High. Moreover, he related to her the adventure of the cap and the rod, and how Abd al-Quddus and Abu al-Ruwashai had asked for them, and he had not agreed to give them to the twain save for her sake. Wherefore she thanked him and blessed him, wishing him long life. And he cried, By Allah, I shall never forget all the kindness thou hast done me from incept to conclusion. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 831st night, she said, She had reached me, O auspicious king, that when Hassan foregathered with the princesses, he related to his sister all that he had endured, and said to her, Never will I forget what thou hast done for me from incept to conclusion. Then she turned to his wife, Manar al-Sana, and embraced her, and pressed her children to her breast, saying to her, O daughter of the Supreme King, was there no pity in thy bosom that thou partest him and his children, and settest his heart on fire for them? Say me, didst thou desire by this deed that he should die? The princess laughed and answered, This was ordained of Allah, extolled and exalted be he, and whoso beguileth folk, him shall Allah beguile. Then they set on somewhat of meat and drink, and they all ate and drank and made merry. They abode thus 10 days, in feast and festival, mirth and merrymaking, at the end of which time Hassan prepared to continue his journey. So his sister rose and made him ready riches and rarities, such as defy description. Then she strained him to her bosom because of leave-talk, and threw her arms around his neck, whilst he recited her account these couplets. The solace of lovers is naught but far, and parting is not save grief singular, and ill will and absence are naught but woe, and the victims of love naught but martyrs are. And how tedious is night to the loving wight, from his true love parted neath evening star. His tears course over his cheeks, and so he cries, O tears, be there more to flow? And with this, Hassan gave the rod to Sheikh Abd al-Quddus, who joyed therein with exceeding joy, in thanking him and securing it mounted, and returned to his own place. Then Hassan took horse and his wife and children, and departed from the palace of the princess, who went forth with him to farewell him. Then they turned back, and Hassan fared on over wild and wold 2 months and 10 days, till he came to the city of Baghdad, the house of peace. And repairing to his home by the private postern, which gave upon the open country, knocked at the door. Now his mother, for long absence, had forsworn sleep, and given herself to mourning and weeping and wailing, till she fell sick, and ate no meat, neither took delight in slumber, but shed tears night and day. She ceased not to call upon her son's name, albeit she despaired of his returning to her. And as he stood at the door, he heard her weeping and reciting these couplets. By Allah, heal, O my Lord, the unwhole of wasted frame and heart worn with dole. And you grant her a meeting, 'tis but your grace shall whelm in the boons of the friend her soul. I despair not of union the Lord can grant, and to will of meeting our woes control. When she had ended her verses, she heard her son's voice at the door calling, O mother, mother, ah, fortune hath been kind, and hath vouchsafed our reunion. Hearing his cry, she knew his voice and went to the door between belief and misbelief. But when she opened it, she saw him standing there, and with him his wife and children. So she shrieked aloud for excess of joy, and fell to the earth in a fainting fit. Hassan ceased not soothing her till she recovered, and embraced him. Then she wept with joy, and presently she called his slaves and servants, and bade them carry all his baggage into the house. So they brought in every one of the loads, and his wife and children entered. Also upon Hassan's mother went up to the princess, and kissed her head, and bussed her feet, saying, O daughter of the supreme king, if I have failed of thy due, behold, I crave pardon of Almighty Allah. Then she turned to Hassan and said to him, O my son, what was the cause of this long strangerhood? He related to her all his adventure from beginning to end. And when she heard the tale of what had befallen him, she cried a great cry, and fell down a fainting at the very mention of his mishaps. He solaced her till she came to herself, and said, By Allah, O my son, thou hast done wisely in parting with the rod and the cap, for hast thou kept them with the care due to them, thou wert master of the whole earth in its breadth and length. But praise be Allah for thy safety, O my son, and that of thy wife and children. Excuse me. They passed the night in all pleasance and happiness, and on the morrow Hassan changed his clothes, and donning a suit of the richest apparel, went down into the bazaar, and bought black slaves and slave girls, and the richest stuffs and ornaments and furniture, such as carpets and costly vessels, and all manner of other precious things, whose like is not found with kings. Moreover, he purchased houses and gardens and estates and so forth, and abode with his wife and his children and his mother, eating and drinking and pleasuring. Nor did they cease from all joy of life and its solace, till there came to them the destroyer of delights, and the severer of societies. And glory be to him who hath dominion over the seen and the unseen, who is the living, the eternal, who dieth not at all. And men also recount the adventure of Khalifah, the fisherman of Baghdad. There was once, in tides of yore and in ages and times long gone before, in the city of Baghdad, a fisherman, Khalifah hight, a pauper white, who had never once been married in all his days. He chanced one morning that he took his net and went with it to the river, as was his wont, with the view of fishing before the others came. When he reached the bank, he girt himself and tucked up his skirts. Then, stepping into the water, he spread his net and cast it first cast, and a second, but it brought up naught. He ceased not to throw it till he had made 10 casts, and still naught came up therein. Wherefore his breast was straitened, and his mind perplexed concerning this case, and he said, I crave pardon of God the great. There is no God but he, the living, the eternal, and unto him I repent. There is no majesty, and there is no might, save in Allah, the glorious, the great. Whatso he willeth is, and whatso he nilleth is not. Upon Allah, to whom bring honor and glory, dependeth daily bread. Whenas he giveth to his servant, none denieth him, and whenas he denieth the servant, none giveth to him. And of the excess of his distress he recited these 2 couplets. And fate afflict thee with grief manifest. Prepare thy patience, and make broad thy breast. For of his grace the Lord of all worlds shall send to wait upon rest, sweet rest. Then he sat a while pondering his case, and with his head bowed down recited also these couplets. Patience was sweet and with bitter fate, and weet that his will he shall consummate. Night oft upon woe as on abyss act, and brings it up to the bursting state, and chance and change shall pass o'er the youth, and fleet from his thoughts, and no more shall bate. Then he said in his mind, I will make this one more cast, trusting in Allah so haply he may not disappoint my hope. And he rose, and casting it into the river, the net as far as his arm availed, gathered the cords in his hands, and waited a full hour, after which he pulled at it, and finding it heavy, and Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 832nd night, she continued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Khalifah the fisherman had cast his net sundry times into the stream, yet it had brought up naught, he pondered his case, and improvised the verses before quoted. Then he said in his mind, I will make this one more cast, trusting in Allah, who happily will not disappoint my hope. So he rose and threw the net, and waited a full hour, after which time he pulled it, and finding it heavy, handled it gently, and drew it in little by little, till he got it ashore, when lo and behold, he saw in it a one-eyed, lame-legged ape. Seeing this, quoth Khalifah, There is no majesty, and there is no might in Allah. Verily we are Allah's, and to him we are returning. What meaneth this heartbreaking, miserable, ill luck, and hapless fortune? What has come to me this blessed day? But all this of the destinies of Almighty Allah. Then he took the ape, and tied him with a cord to a tree which grew on the river bank, and grasping a whip he had with him, raised his arm in the air, thinking to bring down the scourge upon the quarry, when Allah made the ape speak with a fluent tongue, saying, O Khalifah, hold thy hand, and beat me not, but leave me bounden to this tree, and go down to the river, and cast thy net, confiding in Allah, for he will give thee thy daily bread. Hearing this, Khalifah went down to the river, and casting his net, let the cords run out. Then he pulled it in, and found it heavier than before. So he ceased not to tug at it till he brought it to the land, when behold, there was another ape in it, with front teeth wide apart, coal-darkened eyes, and hands stained with henna dyes. And he was laughing, and wore a tattered waistcoat about his middle. Quoth Khalifah, Praised be Allah, who hath changed the fish of the river into apes. Then going up to the first ape, who was still tied to the tree, he said to him, See, O unlucky, how fulsome was the counsel thou gavest me. None but thou made me light on the second ape, and for that thou gavest me good morrow with one eye and thy lameness. I am become distressed and weary without a dirham or a dinar. So saying, he hand in hand a stick, and flourishing twice in the air, was about to come down when upon the lame ape, when the creature cried out for mercy, and said, I conjure thee by Allah, spare me for the sake of this my fellow, and seek of him thy need, for he will guide thee to thy desire. So he held his hand from him, and throwing down the stick, went up and stood by the second ape, and said, O Khalifah, this my speech will profit thee not, except thou hearken to what I say to thee. But an thou do my bidding, and cross me not, I will be the cause of thine enrichment. Asked Khalifah, And what hast thou to say to me, that I may obey thee therein? The ape answered, Leave me bound on the bank, and hie thee down to the river. Then cast their net a third time, and after I will tell thee what to do. So he took his net, and going down to the river, cast it once more, and waited a while. Then he threw it in, and finding it heavy, labored at it, and ceased not his travail, till he got it ashore, where he found in it yet another ape. But this one was red, with a blue waistcloth about his middle, and his hands and feet were stained with henna, and his eyes blackened with coal. When Khalifah saw this, he exclaimed, Glory to God the Great! Extolled be the perfection of the Lord of dominion! Verily, this is a blessed day from first to last. Its ascendant was fortunate in the countenance of the first ape, and the scroll is known to be superscription. Verily, today is a day of apes. There is not a single fish left in the river, and we are come out today but to catch monkeys. Then he turned to the third ape and said, And what thing art thou also, O unlucky? Quoth the ape, Dost thou not know me, O Khalifah? And quoth he, Not I. The ape cried, I am the ape of Abu al-Sadat, the Jew, the Shraf. Asked Khalifah, And what dost thou for him? And the ape answered, I give him good morrows at the first of the day, and he gaineth 5 ducats. And again at the end of the day I give him good even, and he gaineth another 5 ducats. Whereupon Khalifah turned to the first ape and said to him, See, O unlucky, what fine apes other folks have? As for thee, thou givest me good morrow with thy one eye and thy lameness, and thy ill-omened phiz, and I become poor and bankrupt and hungry. So saying, he took the cattle-stick and flourished it thrice in the air, and was about to come down upon the first ape, when Abu al-Sadat's ape said to him, "Let him be, O Khalifah. Hold thy hand, and come hither to me, that I may tell thee what to do." So Khalifah threw down the stick, and walking up to him cried, "And what hast thou to say to me, O monarch of all the monkeys?" Replied the ape, "Leave me and the other 2 apes here, and take thy net, and cast it into the river, and whatever cometh up, bring it to me, and I will tell thee what shall gladden thee." And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. And so do I cease my telling of this tale for today, till it be morrow.